Action.
Thank you for joining us again, Salt of the Streets. I want to thank you again for joining us here, Salt of the Streets YouTube, obviously, youtube.com/Salt of the Streets. We also have our Instagram.com/Salt of the Streets, Facebook, Facebook.com/Salt of the Streets, Patreon, of course, Patreon.com/Salt of the Streets. We also have our beer shows on there, the book club, the newsletters, the review preview. Go there, subscribe, help us make more, better content. I also want to thank Swell Blended for the haircuts. I want to thank Lexi Kyle on Twitch. You can go there if you want to watch some video games. Location Skate Shop, downtown Bremerton, if you need some skateboards, and leggings and aprons, but she's taking some time off, maternity leave, so the baby's due like at the end of May.
Like right now?
Yes, yeah, pretty much any time. So, of course, like, comment, subscribe, and all those things. That really helps us out.
Yeah. Touch all the bells and all the buttons, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, in this here part 2, we're going to be talking some Russia-Ukraine, right? This has been a pretty consistent topic over the last, like 4 episodes, probably, something like that.
Yeah, since the war began. Before the war began, actually.
Yes, since the war began, exactly.
Ever since, it was about... I don't remember when it was, but like a couple years ago, we had done an episode when Russia was doing a military training exercise, and they were putting a ton of troops on the border of Ukraine, and then everybody got real nervous, and they're like, okay, we're pulling out again. And then they came back a few months later, and then bing, bang, boom, we had February. So it's been about a month since we've been taking a look at the Russia-Ukraine situation, because I was on the eastern seaboard for a little while. So a few bullet points just along the timeline I wanted to hit real quick, some major events that have happened over about the last month, and then we'll just open it up for kind of a broader conversation based off of that. Sound good, boys?
Good.
All right. So at this point, we have over 10 million people that have been displaced from Ukraine as refugees. The primary place they're all going is into Poland, and then all up and down the rest of the UN line, essentially, at that point. There was a guy, I'm kicking myself now because I don't remember who it was, but I was listening to the Joe Rogan episode when I was driving to the airport right before we left. And this guy, he's like a tech guy, but he had like somehow or other decided to like hook up with some other journalists, friends of his, and head over to Ukraine, spent some time in Poland. And he said, it's madness. I was like, you show up at the train station and there are just tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people that have just walked there from Ukraine. And it's all women and children, because they're not letting fighting age men out of the country. If you are an 18-year-old male, you can't get out of Ukraine because you're staying to fight. If you are a trans person in Ukraine, there's been some issues with trans folks in Ukraine trying to leave, because if they see you as a man, you are staying. End of story. That's how it goes over there. There's little room for fuckery when Russia's invading your home country.
That's savage,
right? So real quick, we're gonna start.
They're all the trans advocates right now.
Exactly. They're trying to promote World War III. So
they're putting Ukraine bumper stickers on their car. Oh my God! I told Colin,
flying the flags.
I saw a bumper sticker yesterday on the back of a Subaru that was a handprint, and the top half of it was yellow, and the bottom half is blue, or whichever way, and in the middle of it was the outline of the country of Ukraine.
Thirsty boys.
Yes.
Thirsty.
It's everywhere, dude.
It's a new bumper sticker, obviously.
Yeah. I drive into my neighborhood, man, and I see more Ukraine flags flying high than I do American flags, and it's really weird. I feel like I live in little Ukraine now. But hey, I guess it's, it is what it is, man. I mean, how can you not feel bad and root for the people that are getting invaded? I mean, that's...
Well, no,
sovereignty it's a thing.
And I'm not saying that, because we've talked about this before. Obviously, when it boils down to it, we're
picking Ukraine's side.
Yeah, I mean, my position is that I stand with the sovereignty of the people of Ukraine. Right? Those people they deserve to be independent. Yep. They deserve their own liberty, and that's where I'm at with it. I have a difficult time. We'll get into this later. So
I was like, just to say, like, if Ukraine for some reason was trying to invade Russia, I'd be on Russia's side, because sovereignty's a thing for us. So before we dive into this, let's just go ahead and hit this timeline real quick. Yep. March 21st, Ukraine rejects the ultimatum from Russia to surrender in Mariupol, which is their southern port city, which is basically complete ruin and rubble at this point. March 22nd, and mind you, I should caveat all this stuff that this is from a Western news standpoint. This is where these things are coming from, because we've talked about this before in the past. You get very, very different stories depending on which sources you're reading. If you're reading or listening or watching Eastern sources like from RT or something like that, you're going to get a very different story than what you're going to hear about in, the BBC or any of the American corporate press. But this actually timeline came from Al Jazeera. So I feel like that's kind of literally right in the middle. March 22nd, Biden says Putin's constant claims that Ukraine has chemical and biological weapons are a, quote, clear sign he is considering using both of those. I don't know if you guys remember when he said that during a press conference, but it was massive news because the President of the United States just said that there's a clear sign that Russia is entertaining the use of chemical weapons, which I don't know how you go from point A to point B on that one, but hey, whatever. That's the story. April 3rd was the big Bucha massacre, supposedly. According to Bucha's mayor, there was a mass grave found with 280 bodies that were coming out. I mean, you see pictures of these things, so it's kind of hard not to believe that this is somewhat true in some fashion of it. April 4th, Zelensky accuses Russia of genocide. April 5th, President Zelensky addresses the United Nations Security Council regarding the events that happened in Bucha and what he dubbed as a genocide. April 7th, the UN expels Russia from the UN Human Rights Council, which long time coming there, I would like to say. April 9th, Russian President Putin appointed Russian Army General Alexander, this is going to be rough, Dvornikov, who to essentially take over command. He was the same Russian general in charge of their operations in Syria. April 12th, Viktor Medvedchuk was arrested in Ukraine. He is a really good personal friend of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is the godfather of his youngest daughter. They have a long history. He's a very big Ukrainian oligarch, but he was hemmed up by the Ukrainian security forces. April 12th, April 13th, Ukraine claimed the Russian guided missile cruiser Moskva, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, was hit by 2 Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles, resulting in a shipboard fire, which later spread to the magazine and then caused further explosion, which, as we have seen over the last, I think it was on April 14th, so like 2 days ago, the Russians admitted that the ship did sink while it was being towed back to port. There is some speculation going on of whether or not they had nuclear warheads on that missile cruiser. I wouldn't doubt it if it was the flagship missile cruiser of the Russian fleet, but I'm sure the top priority was getting those things off the ship once it was damaged. Other than that, there's a lot of incursions been happening all over the place. There's been some withdrawals in certain areas and bolstering of other areas.
Sanctions.
Additional sanctions have been levied, which obviously we've seen. I don't know if you could say that they've been doing much at all.
They're going after Putin's kids now.
Yeah, which have you? I don't want to go down that road, to be honest.
What that? Were you going to
Always
talk
turns
about?
out well.
Were you
Yeah.
talk about what his daughters look like?
Yeah, I would say some of his daughters look relatively attractive.
One of his daughters. Let's take a moment, because one of his daughters. I saw 2 pictures. Right.
Okay.
One of his daughters I did find relatively attractive. The other one said, "Why? You're not as attractive as your sister. What's up with this? Like, what happened here? And this is very unfortunate.
It's like the Trump sisters, man. It's like Ivanka and whatever the frumpy one is called. Like it sucks, bro. Your sister is Ivanka, and you're adorable.
That's awesome.
So I want to do, before we dive into this, I found this really cool animation on Wikipedia of all places that shows the kind of progression and regression of certain areas in Ukraine. So I'm going to wait for it to. This comes from, it's Wikipedia.
Okay.
But you can look at maps and they're kind of fun to watch. So I'm gonna pull this up there, gentlemen. You're gonna have to forgive me. You won't be able to see it. I'm gonna wait until it cycles back around. Oh, yeah.
Send him the link in Signal.
I'll send you the link real quick. Copy. So you could just watch it. Starts on the 24th of February, massive incursions. They build up on the south through Crimea, on the east through the Donbass region. They punch in the north, and then they really just get bogged down. And then later on, you'll see towards April, we start to basically like fall back, including all the gains that were supposedly made in towards the capital. Yeah. So. A really interesting animation. I'm going to send you guys this real quick on Signal so you guys can have a chance to look at that when you get a chance. So, now that we've been caught up on the official timeline, obviously the war's not over. Where are you guys at on the Ukrainian situation? Who wants to kick it off?
You forgot one important event.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
March 15th, Putin's parliament advisor suggested that ask for reparations from America in the form of Alaska and California.
Well, first of all, they can go fuck themselves. We bought Alaska for them for like, half a dozen like seal furs and shit like that back in the day. So we bought that fair and square. It's a really good Cary Grant movie about the whole thing. It's pretty fantastic.
Well, and on a more social side, we've also seen now Joe Biden has said that he believes the actions in Bucha is a genocide. You know, the administration had to come out after that and say, well, legally and blah, 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 this is what he's meant. He's allowed to say whatever he wants. But, at the end of the day, he's the top of the chain, but also the legal side of it. And so they had been
can't just throw around
to
genocide
avoid that language up until that point.
Yeah.
And he just, as he does, decided he was going to throw that out there. So we'll see what comes from that.
I don't know if he decided or it just slipped out.
The administration is pushing even harder for war crimes now. You know, they're saying that they've gathered all the evidence and that what happened over there is clearly a war crime. So those are the things that have stood out to me the most over this time, right?
I love war crime talk because the age of civilized warfare, apparently, where the United States can drop missiles on innocent families in the Middle East, and we're not charged with war crimes, but we're going to turn around and point the finger at Russia for like actually waging a terrible. Not to undermine the severity of the deal and how fucked up it is, but this is war, dude. It's what happens. Tons of innocent people get murdered all the time.
I happen to have here. This is from the Human Rights Council, right? So this is their report. As of April 15th, 2022. And this says that the Human Rights Council recorded 4,633 civilian casualties in country, 1,982 killed, and 2,651 injured. So that is the current number is 1,982 killed in Ukraine. I also happen to have here this particular article that says in the war in Afghanistan, there were 46,319 civilians killed. So obviously not all of those deaths are on the hands of America, but whatever percentage of them is more than 2,000 people. And I'm not comparing the two things. You're talking about 20 years compared to a few weeks, right? I'm not saying these are equal things. My point in bringing that up is it disturbs me more and more the more serious the rhetoric gets around this in America, that we as a society are for some reason able to intellectually and emotionally absolve ourselves from the death of these civilians that lays directly on the hands of our government, and not us as individuals, but on the hands of our government. But we're so quick to call these people that we don't like war criminals because they have done a fraction of what we did. And I'm not going to say it's because they're brown people that we killed or any of that shit, right? I don't think that really has anything to do with it. At this point in time, I don't have an individual source in which I would attribute that to, but it disturbs me that people, that they don't care. The media sources are so willing to completely distract you from that. We will still promote what happened in Afghanistan, still say even the pullout from Afghanistan was fantastic. Everything that happened about it was incredible. We had to do it. But these people are war criminals for what they've done here. But everyone here is fine. Joe Biden, who voted for the war in Afghanistan, who had a hand in that happening, right, is willing to call these people, Vladimir Putin, these leaders, war criminals. Nothing to say about himself, his one of his predecessors, Barack Obama. You know what I'm saying? Nothing to say about any of this stuff.
I'm going to talk about the drone strikes and that possible coup that you were going to do with Gaddafi, or allegedly some fuckery that was going on over there, which was a bunch of
Right.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you guys a question, and that's regarding the mass graves or the what do you call this? Do you believe that Russia's actually doing it? Essentially, do you believe what the media is telling you what Russia is doing?
That was one of the things I was going to say when Colin was running through the timeline. First, I want to say hello to
Lonesome Lenny
Yep.
and Marcus.
And Marcus.
Shout out Marcus.
Yes.
I feel like you guys might know him.
There you go. So that's what I was going to say when you were going through your timeline. Is I hesitated to do a timeline because I am having a harder and harder time as the days go on believing anything that's coming from American media, because I know that there is a spin on it. I know that they're leaving things out. I know that they have an agenda that they're pushing. And that also does not mean I am believing the things that Russia is saying, because they also have an obvious bias and an obvious agenda.
Yeah.
But it took and is still taking until the end of the war in the Middle East for us to really find out what is happening there. I don't know why anybody believes we have a truly accurate depiction on what is happening in an event on the other side of the planet. I think there is evidence of that, but one thing they keep talking about when they're talking about the events in Bucha is the chemical attacks in Syria, right? And we talked about that the last time that we were here, that there were cover-ups of exactly what happened there. There's still question. A lot of people don't think Russia even did those, that some of the canisters didn't even fall from the air, didn't even come out of airplanes. So there is a lot of fuckery around the last time Russia supposedly used chemical weapons in a conflict. So I really hesitate to fully attribute it to them. There's no question that the images are dark. There's no question that the images are disturbing, but I don't know that I think that they systematically put people into a mass grave or they're actively targeting civilians in this conflict. I just have a difficult time believing that that's what they're doing, because, you know, Vladimir Putin is just so evil and so fucked up that he just doesn't care, and he's going to tell his army to kill civilians because he wants to kill Ukrainians, which are, you know, 2 dick hairs away from a Russian anyway. And I'm not trying to be a racist American, but, you know, I mean, they were all part of the Soviet Union together. I mean, so I struggle to buy into that narrative coming from Western media.
Completely agree with you. I mean, you really can't believe anything that comes out of our media at all. You really, truly can't. I think it's absolutely absurd. Kind of piggyback off of what you were just talking about, how they're so quick to call him a war criminal, and they want to hold new Nuremberg trials to hold him accountable, and yada yada yada, and they're having all this big talk, right? When they're the ones that instituted the coup in 2014, to overthrow their government, have democratically held elections, which put in Zelensky, and you have all of this controversy around Hunter Biden being over there looking after they just so happened to find one of the biggest oil deposits in world history, right? And it all happens to be on the eastern flank of Ukraine, where they're trying to put the missiles aimed at Russia. It's like, why are we poking the bear? And then we're sitting here and then we're playing the victim, right? You know? It's really kind of disgusting that we can sit there and we can say, oh, you know, he's doing it, when we're sitting there and we're doing this. And there's no representation for the people in the media for us to question people anymore. I was making this point to my parents a little while back. I was like, you know, I feel like the government and the media are so far beyond reproach anymore that there is no repercussions for the shit that they're putting out there. It's absolutely disgusting that they can sit there and they can do that, and they can portray us in this way to the world, when the people that are right, and we're not writing the check, we're the ones that are funding this. These hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer money that's going towards military equipment that's funding this war.
Yes.
These people. Granted, we said that we'd back them in 2000 or in 94 when they relinquished their nuke, right?
Yeah.
And we said that we'd back them, so we do owe it to them. Again, I think that they should have kept their nukes. And they should have been able to be sovereign. If you're a sovereign fucking country, you defend yourself.
Right.
Same thing with Israel. Same thing with everyone else. You defend yourself. Right? But that's neither here nor there. We're way past that. But I think it's just really interesting that everyone is sitting here and they're saying, we get out of Afghanistan. We're, this really, anti-war country. And then all of a sudden, after poking the bear long enough, we're ready to jump back into the next fucking war. It's like, I thought these Republicans and these conservatives were all of the bloodthirsty warmongers.
Right.
All of a sudden, like, you have all the fucking, like, pink-haired, feminists that are jumping on board just because their Democrat buddies are sitting there going, oh yeah, let's go fucking war, let's defend fucking Ukraine. It's like, you guys are fucking cowards.
Right.
You guys are all disgusting fucking pigs.
Yep.
I can't believe that none of them know the history of this shit. I'm not saying that I do. I just started reading, and I could be completely fucking off basis. And I'm sorry to anyone out there that disagrees, but fuck you. And I think it's really interesting that no one wants to sit there and say, maybe, just maybe, Zelensky fucking threw all of his political opponents in jail after he was elected. That seems democratic, Maybe, just maybe, we have blood on our hands too, and maybe we should fucking just, stop doing whatever the fuck we're doing and worry about ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, I've seen and heard sources from, mainstream sources, CNN and MSNBC, to even like Breaking Points, who pride themselves on being New Age and stuff like that. They've all said, that this is a completely unprovoked attack on the Russian side. No one did anything to do any of this. When it's as simple as looking at what the NATO lines look like when NATO was first established, and then what they looked like last year. What are you talking about? When the NATO lines have expanded, you can't say that there is no provocation at all. And we discussed, I think, when this first started, that if you're looking at Vladimir Putin and Russia in a very one-dimensional figure of they're just fascist and they're authoritarians, you're never going to understand this. If you don't consider that Vladimir Putin might actually believe the things that he's saying, not all of it. He's saying some things for the purpose of the public and to justify whatever, but he genuinely believes in some form in what he's doing. He genuinely believes that his way of life is being threatened by Western culture. Whether not you guys, but, us as a culture believe that or not, you have to consider he might actually fucking believe that. And if he does, then seeing the NATO lines move closer and closer to his homeland, his own culture, his own way of life is going to feel really fucking threatening. Whether we as the American government and people think that is valid or not, he might actually fucking feel that way. And it's weird to see it boil down to such a one-dimensional thing,
It is, and especially when you think about Go ahead, Ivan.
And to your point, you don't need to look any further than the Bay of Pigs. When the Russians did do that, what the fuck did we do?
Right.
Yep.
We staged a coup. Yeah, we staged an attempted coup. Yeah, in another country that now we have beef with. I think now we let people go there now, but that was just within the last few years that we were able to go there. Yeah.
It's the relationship with Cuba has been difficult. And I like to put it in the Dave. I think it was Dave Smith, the comedian, libertarian savant. He likes to say, if you want to find out who America's next enemy is, just look at who we're funding now. And I mean, I feel like you could go back through history and that works out pretty damn well.
Right.
And and also I would say this, if you are Vladimir Putin and you are trying to wage this war against your neighboring nation of Ukraine, how is it that when your guys are being shot, your MiGs are being shot out of the sky, your helicopters are being shot down, and all of your soldiers being, killed and all this stuff by UN weaponry, even though they're being held by Ukrainian soldiers, how do you think, his perspective is he's at war with the West. Period. I mean,
Right.
you're obviously, you don't have the boots on the ground and so on and so forth, but you're fighting against the combined military manufacturing power of the West, essentially, at this point.
They're shooting 5.56 right now.
Yes.
they are shooting 5.56 at the Russian soldiers. That is where we are at. They are sending millions of rounds of ammunition over to Ukraine. They're using American weapons to shoot American bullets with Ukrainian soldiers. Yeah, it's crazy how easy it is for people, the general public, to just disassociate themselves with that factor, you know, because it's righteous. Of course it's the right thing. It's righteous. You know, why wouldn't we be doing that? How could it possibly be wrong when we're standing for what is right? We've always stood for what's right. How could it possibly be wrong? You know?
Yeah, we're America. We're the good guy, right?
Yes, because Ukraine deserves to be sovereign, but Russia does not. Russia needs to sit down and shut the fuck up and do what America says, but Ukraine deserves to be sovereign, you know? That's just that's cognitive dissonance. That's you cannot hold both ideals and actually be thinking logically at the same time.
Mm-hmm. It's not a good situation.
Yeah.
So Zeke, what are your thoughts towards where we're at now, I should say, and where this might go next?
With Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah. World War III, just nobody's calling it that yet.
No. So the conspiracy theory part of my mind is like Russia and China, they're wanting to drag this shit out as long as possible. Right here I have I can actually speak out of the company I work. A lot of our precious metals, they originally came from Russia. Gold, the zinc, the silver, all that shit. What happened when we stopped getting it? A lot of more expensive. Production slowed the fuck down.
Silver market popped.
So, and you know, there's also, let's see, we have, that's all precious metals here. Oh, and the natural gas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, now while Biden is tapping into our gas reserves, giving us some temporary relief, gas bills, it's only going to just rebound worse.
Yeah.
Relief. Once that shit's gone, much, much worse.
Well, we have to refill it. We have to refill the reserves.
Yeah.
Where's that going to come from?
Some more Russian gas?
Right. At some point, you have to refill the reserves, or else you don't have a reserve anymore because you fucking wasted it all.
Right. So I'm in my head, because I don't have anything to prove this, I'm telling Russia, like, just keep on dragging this shit along. Like, if, you know, we're going to fucking drag America's economy through the fucking mud. Right now, China's going through the same shit with their whole COVID thing, and they're trying to get the whole world to, they have a whole COVID thing going on again.
Yeah. Yeah, they got a big COVID thing going on now.
Yeah. And that's a whole other can of worms. They're trying to reinstate those whole mask mandates that back up in Philadelphia. But anyway, with what I see in the future is that Russia just keeps on dragging. They'll probably make some progress and they just pull back. They'll make some and just fucking pull back.
Yeah.
Like they will be getting a lot of their shit from Russia, whether it's ammunition, missiles, tanks, whatever. They have the financial means now. They have the financial backing because they trade in the U.S. reserve currency. They can just trade it in the reserve yen.
Yep.
And we're beholden to China. We have no choice. We in the West, the EU, can stop doing business with Russia as much as possible. They can even switch to green energy and do ourselves a deficit so that we're separate from Russia. We have no choice for the foreseeable future to separate ourselves from China on a large-scale basis enough that they could not subsidize Russia enough to keep them afloat, and Russia will do the same shit. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Russia will do the same shit that North Korea does and sell drugs and do anything else that they have to do on the back end to make ends meet. It doesn't matter to them. They'll do whatever they got to do to make sure that Mother Russia stays alive.
Yeah, they're not going to let themselves just straight go into, to become a third-rate power anymore. They're going to push and do what they can.
Their people are used to a certain standard of living. They're not going to tolerate. He's not going to be able to stay in power if his people go from whatever life they have now to a complete third-class existence in less than a generation.
Yeah,
he will not be able to stay in power if that's what he's going to do to his people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard a couple of people talk about this in various different ways, but when you look at the leadership in the balance of power, I should say, in the Russian Federation, is it Vladimir Putin controlling the oligarchs, or is it is it the oligarchs controlling Vladimir Putin, or is it a more symbiotic relationship than that? Is one more accountable to the other? It's hard to tell, I think, unless you really have an insider tracked into what goes on over there. So it's really hard to tell. But at some point, the sanctions will add. I'm skeptical about sanctions, to be perfectly honest. I don't know how much they really care because
ruble's bouncing back already.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't matter. They have alternative financial means to get what they want. Oh no, they're locking up my big yacht. Okay. Who cares? I could get another one. I got private jets. I'm not that worried about it.
Still have all the fertilizer. I still have all the gas.
Yes.
I still have all of the things that you're going to need come time,
And when it comes time and we are continually bombing the fields of Ukraine, so you cannot plant the grain and the wheat and whatever it is, then we're going to starve you out. I mean, it's
the same way. Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that, because that's literally, we were talking about this earlier, Rome and all this shit. That's the same way that Rome ended up winning wars, especially civil wars within the Roman Empire itself. They didn't invade these enormous cities until the end, when they would go and take all the treasure. They would just starve the people out. They would just surround the entire enormous city and cut off all the supply lines and let them exist on their reserves until they could anymore. The same thing we're doing with our fucking gas right now. You can spend all the reserves that you want. When they are tapped out and you are doing this circular bullshit with your gas industry, where you're having Jen Psaki say, "Oh well, they have all these leases. Why can't they just do this?" When at the same, we've talked about this before. To simplify it down, right? The oil companies are having to pay off the people, not pay off, but pay back their investors, because the investors lost so much money when so many of the expansions failed. We talked about how many gas producers or energy producers had to close when the oil war was going on.
Yep.
So it's not as simple, and you guys know this, it's not as simple as it's being boiled down to in the White House press briefing room. It's being blamed, as always, on capitalists, when government intervention is an enormous piece of the puzzle here. So it just feeds so much into what we were talking about earlier, of literally not paying attention to history. If there's only one thing you're going to pay attention to, why don't we as a society think about the other largest republic that's ever existed? Fucking Rome. If you're only going to look up one thing, look up the one thing that looks the most like you do, so you can see what the problem was.
Yeah.
Why not? Like, so much of this stuff it's right there. It is literally right there.
It's literally what our entire republic is based on, was the Republican model that was created in early Rome.
Yeah.
I mean, and you don't bother to look at that. And if you did, you didn't like the answers, because it doesn't necessarily follow your narrative. So just distracted, move the other way. Like, it really doesn't matter. It's because the narrative is going to be crafted,
right,
whatever way that they want it to be crafted, because of the incestuous relationship between. We're going to talk about this in part 4 today. Jen Psaki going over to MSNBC.
Right.
I mean, does that not strike anybody as a conflict of fucking interest? If you work for the White House as the press secretary, and so you're getting, by default, because that's your job, you're getting the spotlight for the White House. All eyes are on you. You become a personality all in your own. How is there not like a 4-year waiting period before you can go back to media or some shit? It's incestuous. And so the two of them will work together to decide whatever narrative will work for them. The corporate press will run the story. They'll make money off of it, and they'll make the White House look good. And there's nothing that we could do about it except for what we're doing now, which is just trying to have these types of conversations, supporting other people that are having these conversations, and just, tell one or two of your friends.
So I want to ask you guys about something that Zeke said in regards to the Russian military, right? And that is the pushing forward and then and bringing back, right? Pushing forward and bringing back.
The surging.
And I think that there's already evidence of that when you're talking about Crimea and other things in the past, right? But even if you're just talking about this particular conflict, on the graphic that we looked at here and that Colin sent you guys, you can see there's the hard push where they're going to probably see as far as they can go. If they can possibly take Kiev, then they're going to do that. And if it's going to be as easy as maybe they're hoping that it will be, not that they think that it will be, but easy as they're hoping that it will be, then they'll take that whole part of the country. They'll take the whole country if they can. And if not, then we'll just take these two portions and maybe a little bit more that we already know want to kind of be with us anyway. We'll just actually take them, right?
Yeah.
I think that there is some evidence of that, and I think that it makes sense to me for sure, so I want to know what you guys think about that. Ivan, you first.
Well, I think that honestly, I'm not sure. I really don't know. I think that there's a lot of I don't know. I'm actually interested in what Zeke has to say on this one. I need to think about this one for a second.
Absolutely.
About so just to clarify, like you're saying that the Russian military is taking, like when they're advancing, they're taking some as they're pulling back.
Yeah, like they're pushing it forward to see whatever they can take, and then if whatever, obviously they met resistance in Kiev, they couldn't fully take the city, and so they went back and they took what they knew they could take at the end, because the two portions that they recognized before the conflict popped off, they knew wanted to be part of Russia anyway.
Okay, so here's my question: do you have a map or anything on you?
That's that we can reference.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because what I would like to. Their farmlands, where they have for crop production becomes a much bigger issue, because that would actually make like, okay, pulling back, but we're fucking taking this farmland. And
really, let me just pull up like just even like Google Maps. I mean, that'll show you where the farmland's at and where that's not. Let me pull that up for everybody.
Yeah,
because I am really curious. Because they do call Ukraine the breadbasket of Europe, And so let's just pull this up over here.
Europe gets a lot of their shit from Russia.
Yeah.
Their shit from Ukraine as well.
So we have the border there of Ukraine. So you could see that's the outer border there. Eastern portions. Let's just kind of zoom in here. I mean, it's farmland. And let's just push in a little bit more central. And it's just farms, just fields and fields and fields.
Word. And that's why I'd have a list here from bakertilly.ua/en/news, and this is actually the top 5 most agricultural regions of Ukraine. Obviously, I cannot pronounce any of these names. I'll send this to you guys.
But it'll be fun.
Yeah, I'll send it to you guys in Signal right now so that you can look at it also.
I've been reading Middle Eastern, village names for the last 20 years.
Good luck.
Trying to shift over to Eastern European is just very difficult. It's a hard transition.
The number 1, there are 1,968,000 hectares of crop in this area. Most of the crop area in Ukraine is allocated to wheat, corn, and barley. In 2014, cereals have occupied 148,000 square kilometers, more than the territory of England. On the first and second place in terms of crop areas are that name and the Odessa regions, and they were in Odessa. That's definitely that's
Odessa's down south towards the coast, south central.
The 2 largest regions in Ukraine. Number 2, 66% of the Kirovograd region is allocated to the crop area, so a lot.
I mean, it's just by looking at the Google. I mean, there's very little forested areas. It's just it's little tiny pockets of cities and villages and stuff like that, and then it's just farmland. That's basically it, man.
Farmland as far as the eye can see.
Yeah. Until you really push really west.
Most of the Ukrainian honey is produced in the Donetsk region, 8,000 tons in 2014.
The Donetsk?
Yes.
Is that what they said?
Yes.
That's one of the eastern regions.
And that's number 6. That's number 6 on the list. So
no honey.
Have we not been hearing, obviously this is straight off the top of my head, I've never seen this list before. Have we not been hearing for years about the bees are getting fucked up, it's going to ruin our honey industry, the supplies and all this shit, right? So now we're talking about most of the Ukrainian honey is produced in the Donetsk region that was just taken by Russia.
Mm-hmm. Russian honey about to be lit.
So while they may be losing some industry in the EU, right, if they're going to talk about trying to get energy independent or whatever they're going to do there, they're squaring away other industries actively. Ukraine takes first position in terms of honey production in Europe and third position in the world. About 400,000 of beekeepers work in the country. In 2014, they produced 66,000 tons of this product and exported 36.3 thousand tons. The largest importer became Turkey, Slovenia, the U.S., Poland, Germany, France, and Spain.
36.3 thousand tons of honey.
Yes.
That's a shit ton of honey.
And looks like we're number 3 on the list.
We're number 3. Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Again, I have no proof. I have no proof of this.
It sounds like proof to me, bro.
No. Like, wait, obviously that. What I was gonna get at was like, so they're obviously taking these, and they're gonna hold on to that shit, and I'm gonna tie this back to where the media is making it sound like they're pulling back, or like you are pushing them back. When in fact, the plan is for them to just go back in the first place.
Right.
The only hole in that logic is, when they totaled a flagship, right?
Yeah.
On my logic, that I don't know why they would just fucking destroy a flagship. But the narrative could be they're pulling back, but we're going to make it sound like Ukraine's winning, hooray for democracy. But when in fact, they can say whatever the fuck they want. We're going to take this shit, and then we're going to come back. It's nice and steady. It's just a slow fucking choke.
Right.
And whether or not Biden or arguing, it doesn't fucking matter to them, because for them it's a fucking win-win.
Oh yeah, I mean we're making money hand over fist in the military industrial complex portion of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, dude.
Mm-hmm.
All the defense contractors are making bank right now. They're seeing, I mean, I don't know about record, but they're seeing immense increases just over the last few weeks. We've seen Lockheed Martin.
What is
Raytheon.
that for the government? That's tax income. That's tax.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we expanded the defense budget last year, and then even Mitch McConnell called for another expansion once this whole deal in Ukraine and Russia popped off. So they're talking about another expansion in the new budget. So
it's like this. It's like the schools, man.
Yes.
The military-industrial complex is like the schools. The more the defense budget goes up, the more expensive weapons get. The more money that goes directly to them. It's a incestuous relationship.
Did you hear that briefing? Did you hear that? Wanted to have a bump up to $738 in their budget.
That's insane.
Again,
that's so much
money. It's so much money. And they wanted to. I mean, he was trying to just the fact that there's there's not enough personnel, weapons are getting and all this other bullshit, and it's reckless spending.
Absolutely.
Like you have overpaid employees, and I'm probably gonna piss off a lot of people at the shipyards, but if you're a government worker at your fucking shipyard, a lot of those people, especially at Portsmouth, Norfolk, I'll say Mobile, Alabama, San Diego, they don't really do shit.
Yep.
They just sit
Your
there.
job today is to sweep this room.
They do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Well, and I know.
Okay, and the reason.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And the reason why we lost our defense contract in Arabia to Russia is because they fucking bust their ass. And why would Saudi Arabia pay us out the ass when all we're doing is twiddling our thumbs and doing the bare Russia comparable amount in currency, and they're busting their ass.
Right.
Yeah,
it's the same answer a good deal to me.
Yeah, it's the same answer to why everything's made in China, because it's cheap, because they have slave labor. You know, it's the reason. But yeah, it's not a total parallel there, but it's a problem, because that does mean, like, we are going to be the more expensive guy in town
for no reason.
Yeah,
for no reason.
Yep.
Because
unions,
can find
bro,
someone out of town to do the same job and get it done. What you've been working on for like the past 3 weeks, and like,
yeah. Why do government highway projects they never end? You know what I mean? They're
never fucking end.
Yeah.
Well, and I have heard firsthand accounts from our own shipyards, from my best friend when he worked there, when Trenton worked, when he was a rigger, when he was on certain projects where there were weeks and months at a time where he would be at work waiting for people to cut a pipe that always took longer than his shift was, but he still had to come in just in case they finished cutting the pipe early so they could use a crane to lift it out. So for months, him and his entire crew, it's not just him, and it's not his fault because that's what his fucking job was, but him and his entire crew were paid $20+ an hour. Some people, the veterans, are paid $30-$40+ an hour to literally sit and wait for something that never happened. And that comes straight from our pockets, straight from tax dollars.
Straight from taxpayers, and why people don't cause an uproar is fucking beyond.
Well, and
they keep on fucking raising taxes.
Yep. And
what do you have to show for it?
And like, for a really good, because this is going to hit home, I think. When you look at the number one employer of the county, right?
Yeah.
The federal government.
Absolutely.
And so these are the people that are making all this money. Now, when the vast majority of workers are making that kind of money, guess what happens to, like, the housing market? The cost of living is greatly increased. And so now everybody that lives there that does not have those government jobs, that cannot make that kind of money, even the business owners that run the businesses here, we can't compete with that. So there's no market, there's no direct competition, because you cannot compete with those numbers. So it's either unions or federal. And then people like you and I have to compete for tiny cookie cutter houses in developments for $700,000.
They're literally selling uninhabitable houses in Kitsap County for $300,000.
That you can't even get a mortgage for.
You can't live in.
Yep.
They won't allow you to live in it because it's so fucked up.
Yep.
Houses that don't have entire backsides for $250,000. The whole backside of the house is not there. It's open to the wilderness. The floors are not there. $250,000 to live in Port Orchard. Why do you guys lived here? Why would you want to live in Port Orchard anyway?
Yep.
So you're close to the shipyard, and you're not going to buy a house that doesn't have a back half on it if you work in the shipyard. Yeah. No, it's horrific. We're closing in on kid number 2, and it is quite literally impossible to purchase a home that is livable for our family in Kitsap County and in an area to be able to try and keep my job. It's not feasible. You're talking about $450,000, $500,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house that is, like you said, in a development. You don't have a yard.
There's no land,
area to yourself, no land, no anything. It's just you could have a dog. Yeah.
You might have to pay the HOA a small fee for that, but you could still have your dog.
The shipyard combined with, Amazon and stuff across the water, when they're having to increase their wages for public pressure and to compete with the government that's there, they're paying people $20 an hour or whatever to work in the facilities. They just built a new facility out by the Bremerton Airport on your way out to Belfair.
Massive.
So there's one right in town. If you go through Gorst, you will literally see between 5 and 10 Amazon trucks just coming into Bremerton to deliver shit straight from that facility.
Yep.
Every time, no miss.
Which, as a consumer, does not suck.
Yeah. No,
but as somebody that has to live there and compete directly against the DOD budget that continues to rise, so we can get back to that.
Yeah.
That's how it affects the everyday Americans. It's because all that boost in funding is going towards everybody at the shipyards and at the military bases, all the civilian employees there that make a really good living, because it's one of the safest livings I think anybody can, as long as you follow the rules, do what you're told.
Right.
And you just be quiet and do your relatively do your job, you can ride a cushy career for 20 years, get a nice cushy pension, and make a fat fucking paycheck all the way through it. But it fucks over everybody else that lives in that area. And because anybody that's not going to participate in that system, it fucks over. And we're going to talk about like macros and economics. I have a feeling that kind of theme is going to run throughout.
Right.
Because it's not good, man. And there's no disconnect. There's no connection to that. There's a massive disconnect.
And because, like you said, the budget is always growing, they're always hiring for the federal government.
Always.
And because it's easier to just get a job there. If you can't beat them, join them, right? And people don't want to leave the state. They don't want to uproot their lives. They don't want to uproot their children.
I'm ready.
Just quit whatever small job they have. Or even if they work another big job. If you work at Amazon, you're making $20 an hour, but you can go to the shipyard and make $24 an hour.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be closer to your house. You can maybe work better hours, or you'll get better benefits. I'll just go work for the federal government instead.
Yep.
They hire more and more and more people all the time. The quality of the people goes down and down and down. And when you do, it's the traditional stereotype. When you have new people, fucking Jordan's dad, right? He just came back from Japan, so he has always been a good worker anyway, and then was revitalized with the Japanese work ethic.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so he's there, the head of that whole department, the head of the shop. He's trying to get all of the terrible people out, and people fucking hate him. The workers are complaining about him because he wants them to do their jobs. He wants them to actually be good and get projects done and not waste taxpayer money. And people are fucking complaining about him.
How dare you?
It's ridiculous.
Tyrants.
Yes. He had people. Yes, it's horrific. Yeah, I don't want to get too.
I bet.
It is horrific. I mean, I'm telling you, when Trenton worked there were stories of people literally getting drunk at work in the shipyard because they had nothing else to do. They're getting paid to sit around. And I blame them, and I don't blame them, because complacency does bad shit to people.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting at work with your thumb up your ass for 40 hours a week for 6 months at a time, you're gonna do weird shit. They're fucking building hammocks and storage containers to sleep while they're getting paid $20, $30, $40 an hour in taxpayer money to literally fucking sleep. It's deadening. It's
only enable it.
Yep.
Those unions only enable behavior.
Yep.
That's right.
And it's happening, like you said, it's happening all over the place. Happening here, San Diego, anywhere where when that is the industry, when the federal government is the industry, that is what is happening if you don't work for them. It's a mafia-style fucking cabal that teams up with the enormous hedge fund capitalist industry to fuck people out of housing and other jobs and to destroy industries and companies so that they buy them up and do whatever they want. I work for an incredible small company where there is no union and they treat us amazingly well. I got a fucking Yeti cup for Easter yesterday.
Damn! You got an Easter gift?
There's 50 employees there, and everyone got a Yeti cup that has their name on it, and it was all full of candy because it's fucking Easter. That's just a thing that they did.
Man, I feel bad. I didn't do anything for my employees for Easter.
No, and
I'm a secular work environment.
It's horrific that civilians whose tax dollars, or people, fucking Zeke, who you worked for the federal government and you work for a private company, and you still get fucked by the federal government.
Yeah.
Because you choose to not work for them full time. It's dark.
Disgusting.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys this. Pulling all the way back to, let's refocus on Ukraine for a second.
Oh yeah.
Where do you guys see this going? What's the end game here? How is this gonna end? And why would it end that way? So I'm gonna throw this to Ivan first. And I mean, just guessing, long term.
Yeah.
What do you think?
None of us are experts. We're all just throwing shit around here.
Right. And you're referring to specifically the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Yeah.
Yes. We will expand in part 3.
Okay. Well, I honestly think that Putin's going to get what he wants. He's going to he's already got Belarus, he's already got Latvia, he's already got Moldova and Kosovo, right? I mean, they're all puppets. And then the last little last ship that he wants currently, as far as I know, is Ukraine. So he'll get it, and there'll be a bunch of defectors, including the current president of Ukraine. And after that, I think that he probably will stop, just to rub it in everyone's face, that say that he won't. Right? And then what he'll do is he'll continue doing what he is already doing. He backed the ruble with gold. That
was a big move.
Emphasis there. He backed the ruble with gold. It was in a free fall. And then when he announced it, that he'd be buying at a floor price of 5,000 rubles to the gram, it rebounded so jarringly that it broke necks.
Yeah, I got whiplash.
Back up to terrible whiplash. And side note, just a point of contention that I have with the West, especially with the plutocracy in upper politics and banking. The Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan were allowed to buy Russian bonds right when they announced sanctions. In the throes of the free fall, they bought bonds from Russia, knowing that it was going to rebound. This kind of plays into everything that I'm going to end up talking about soon. These motherfuckers, they knew that he was going to back their currency with gold and it was going to rebound. They bought at the throes of the bottom, right? And then they sold already. Plausible deniability, right? These motherfuckers, it's absolutely insane.
How many drops do you put in the eye?
One each.
We're all family men here. No.
We're all family
men here. We're all family men here.
That's right.
We do this at Colin's house because he doesn't have kids.
That's right.
That's why we do it at Colin's house.
Yeah, we used to do it at your house in the beginning.
That's right. In the beginning. Well, when they're infants, they're quiet.
Yeah.
Relatively,
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
And not to be too long-winded about it, I think that, I mean, Bush or Bill, Bush, Obama, and Biden, they've all done a very good job of forwarding globalism, and they've all done a very good job of assisting power shifts from west to east. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what's going to end up happening here. We've already seen it, and it's going to progress, and we are going to be the benefactors of a degrading society. And it's very sad because we're going to all pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to suck, but I think that what's been needing to happen in our economy for a very long time is a burning of the dead wood. And I think that it's going to cause everyone to tighten their belt here locally, domestically in the United States. There's going to be a lot less bullshit and tomfoolery going on with all of these subjects like transgenderism and woke leftist. Yes, because we're going to have to be a lot more fiscally responsible because of what they're doing. We're not going to have all the excesses that have been afforded to us through the wielding of the U.S. dollar. So, anyways, that's.
I wanted to build off something real quick that you had said. You're talking about a power shift between the west to the east, right? From the west to the east. You guys know of Thucydides' trap.
I've heard that term before.
We have heard the term. Gentlemen? No? Thucydides' trap, I think is how you say it.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it sounds like you're describing is a shift in global superpower, which essentially every time that has ever occurred, the major global level conflict has occurred. I mean, is that?
And that's and I am exactly saying that. I mean, I'm just throwing spaghetti at the walls just to see what sticks. But that's what I see. It's going to happen. I mean, I'm reading the book. I mentioned it in the before talks. Ray Dalio's Changing World Order, and the guy is brilliant. And I think that everyone that he's been in contact with all kind of subscribes to the same kind of thought process. And when it comes to the human condition and the rise and fall of empires and long debt cycles. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you put all this stuff together like he has, and it's basically a roadmap what's going to happen. And basically my entire opinion that I just stated is what Ray Dalio has kind of stated in his book. The guy's brilliant. I would highly suggest it. If you guys have a chance, it's more a history lesson than it is an economics lesson. It's unbelievable.
And can I clarify one thing with you? You said you think that Vladimir Putin is going to take Ukraine. Did you mean in this current conflict, or over time he's going to take Ukraine?
So I guess this bleeds back into your previous question. So like with the surging and backing, I think that it's going to be over time. Okay. Like I agree with Zeke that the slow strangulation is going to be a thing. It's going to give time for things to fester and really kind of build to a head. And it's going to give us reason to enter eventually once we see enough of this bullshit. Things are going to, people are going to say, okay, enough. And then we're going to finally jump in, and it's going to be ugly. I think I don't know that that there's going to be a world war. I really freaking hope not, because I mean we're talking about the possible end of humanity as we see it, or humanity period, right? But at the same time, I don't think I hope that cooler heads will prevail. But at the same time, I think that if things do get escalated, this is the perfect way to get it escalated, is to let a slow burn happen, let things fester, let people get really upset about what's happening. And, once people start seeing the starvation and the complete ruin of war, and it's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
So just right before we get to you, Zeke, I'll re-ask you the question again to kind of refresh. But Ivan, would it be safe to say that essentially you see this more playing out like in Afghanistan compared to a Crimea? Crimea being quick, fast, and then a long, drawn out.
This would play out more of like an Afghanistan thing. Mm-hmm. Not as young, obviously. I think Russia would be gained. I mean, time, and that just means nothing to them, because to them it's
a long-term investment.
That's what it takes. That's what it takes. So we'll throw bodies at it if it means our ultimate.
Yeah. They do have a track record of that.
Right. Like over time, more of like an Afghanistan type deal. Mm-hmm. Crimea, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah, Crimea, they kind of got lucky in a way. They were able to do it. I don't want to say totally bloodlessly, but essentially it was like a bloodless coup. It was
backdoor style.
Yeah, they came in through the back door. I thought that's what they were going to do in
some backdoor deal had to have been struck between Putin, Obama, and the leader of Crimea or some shit.
Yeah. All brought to you by the connection of Hunter Biden.
Have you guys seen the theory on Crimea and why that was struck the way that it was?
No, but I would love for you to tell me.
So I think that the reason why it was relatively this and people weren't very enraged about it is because there is one river that goes into Crimea, right? Mm-hmm. And it's actually one of the ones that they're sectioning off currently in the east. And that river was dammed at the border of Crimea. So they basically said, yeah, sure, whatever. Not just completely like handed it over, but at the same time they said, okay, well, there you go. Now we're going to cut off all of the irrigation and all of the water access to Crimea. So you were going to grow crops there. Now you can't. It's completely useless to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Interesting. Now, I think that's probably major like FU to Putin, and now Putin's sitting there going, okay, well, I'm going to take the river, I'm going to take the eastern part, the ones that I really wanted anyways, and now I have water access to Crimea.
I'm just going to look at the map here just real quick, because I'm like, that is a really interesting situation, because yeah, there's Crimea, and you got
there's one major river.
Yep. I'm not even going to pretend it's the Don River.
Hey!
And, Donbass, that would make sense, the Don River. But that's over in, I'm looking at the wrong river, I think.
Oh, come on. Don't hype me up like that.
That's right. You're already in Russia, bro. It's fine. So we'll call it the Mies River, maybe? That's a pretty big one. Runs right through. Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. It's a solid strategic resource, which I think is, when we're talking about the capturing and the falling back, the surges that are going on. When you play, I play a lot of like PC strategy games and stuff like that. And in the game of like Civilization, a lot of times you're taking over territories and stuff like that for strategic resources, which are not necessarily like bases and military installations or chemical weapon or chemical biological research facilities. Sometimes it's honey.
Right.
Sometimes it gets you access to the river where you can control the dam to shut off the opponent's ability to make fucking food. I mean, if that's not strategic, I don't know what is. And then next thing you know, everybody's starving and you just walk in the door and it's yours.
Right.
So it does not surprise me if that's what's happening, which I would not Putin's not a dumb guy. He's never been a dumb guy. You don't go from, joining the KGB to like becoming the president of the Federation of Russia through two different countries. So you lived through the Soviet Union and then you still rose up to become president of the following nation.
Right.
Like, you're not a dumb guy. You know what you're doing. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he has to work with. He knows that essentially his entire massive fleet of shitty, Soviet, not even Soviet era, but like Russian tanks that feel like, you watch the videos of these guys shooting the I don't know what type of, is it a tow missile or something like that? Some American-made fucking badass anti-tank missile. You see those dudes they cut into these things like they're paper. Putin has to know that.
Right.
But he's committing the forces. He's doing these things because he has an end goal and he's getting something out of it. It's just whether or not it's the corporate press knows what it is and is just not telling us, or much like us, I don't know what it could be. I just trust that he knows what he wants and he's going to get it. And that's where I'm at on it anyways.
One of the interesting things that I really made as a big point of interest was he had an interview, I think it was a couple months ago, and he stated that the reason why he's entering this conflict is because his exact words were, we know what every outcome of this situation is going to be, very calculated, translated, right? And we are not, I forget exactly what he said, but the gist of it was, while a threat to our existence is being waged, we're not going to lay down. So he views this as a truly existential threat to Russia as a nation, right? And whatever threat that he sees, we're not seeing it, right? And I think that that's very interesting.
Right.
What is it that we're holding over his head that makes him think that Russia as a nation is in the balance here?
Yeah, and I think we might have talked a little bit about that last month's episode, but there was that big talk about Joe Biden said the world liberal order, or the liberal world order was being established after like World War I or World War II, whatever version that it was, whether it was the League of Nations that became the UN or whatever it was. I mean, it's rather obvious. Anyone with two eyes can see it, that Vladimir Putin has no interest in participating in this kind of like global, liberal, democratic, kind of centrally controlled like thing the West has going on right now. I mean, he's watched the birth and growth of the EU, where he watched all these sovereign European nations be swallowed up by a giant, stupid fucking bureaucracy that does not represent the citizens that it pertains to. I mean, and then he's watching the UK dip out during Brexit. The dude does not want a part of this thing, and he's going to grab what he can while he can, and he's going to defend. He sees that as not just an adversary, but an enemy. It's like you said, it's an existential enemy. This is the end of the Eastern Russian way of life. If that was allowed to come over, I can understand where he's coming from. Salud. That's the way we do it in this house. We say it in Spanish. So
I think that's wonderful.
Do you either have anything extra you want to say, Don? Do you have anything you want to add to Ukraine stuff? I think we've been going a little over an hour on this topic. We could probably get close to switching directly over to our economic big picture stuff.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I want to say outside of economics is one of the things that Colin and I talked about when this conflict first kicked off and we started contributing all of this money to the Ukrainian war effort is I don't remember which one of the three of you that it was that said it, but that talked about if you want to know who we're going to fight next, look at who we're paying right now. One of my big concerns is, Zeke, I think you touched on it too, it's like it is kind of an Afghanistan factor where when Russia makes its next push, there is a counter effort, a Russian sympathizing counter effort that exists in Ukraine that is against America because it doesn't think that we did enough, or for any number of reasons that they could be upset that we didn't put troops on the ground, or we watched things be destroyed, or we didn't invade Russia, or whatever reason it is that those people don't believe that America did what it's supposed to do. I have a huge concern that we will end up fighting portions of Ukraine in the future with our own money.
Dave Smith.
So that's something I have put on the back. Not on the back burner because it's an active concern. But yeah, I keep it alive in the back of my brain, I think is what I'm getting at. Yeah.
That's wild.
If it wasn't Ukraine.
That we were fighting there?
If it wasn't Ukraine. But if Russia took Ukraine and now Russia is in control of all of those.
The American arms and bullets and all that 5.56 we talked about.
Then on top of that, look at Afghanistan. Yeah. We left $80 billion worth of equipment and shit there.
We're good at that.
Like, and this was the situation that I was mentioning earlier. It's like we left. The reason why we went to war with Afghanistan was because of the Taliban. And guess who's in power now? And guess who has 8 million times the armaments is when we initially got there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And technology.
Exactly.
That's
very interesting.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now warfare there has been escalated.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Due to our own fucking incompetence.
Yeah, so even if it isn't anti-American factions, even if it's just a civil war that is prospered and allowed to happen because of the existence of the American arms in Ukraine, the enormous increase in firearms, in military arms that are there, that if there are other factions, even if they're not anti-American, but still pro-Russian factions that begin to exist. Shit, man, like we just saw in these eastern portions of Ukraine. If Russia infiltrates on a individual civilian basis like they did in Crimea, and they just have people move into these portions of Ukraine that are pro-Russian, and they then get involved and are able to get their hands on these American weapons that are there now, there's an active pro-Russian threat that is pushing the border actively a little bit further into Ukraine.
Yeah.
Past Kyiv, where now they have control of the capital, now they've got the whole country.
And
they're legitimate. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's evidence of that.
And one has to ask the question is, why they didn't do that again? Why is it that it couldn't work in the, Donetsk or Luhansk, I think is the other one over on the east side. Like, why couldn't they do that there? Why is it that we actually they actually invaded? Why did they actually invade if they could have replicated what they did in Crimea? That obviously I feel like would have been the first result. So what was it that pushed that back? Is that going to be more evidence towards looking at like a larger like Ukrainian civil war in the future? As the Russian occupation grows, and then they build up the sympathies on both sides, and next thing you know, we're looking at instead of the Berlin Wall, we got a Kievian wall, or it's Eastern and Western. And
I've personally come to the conclusion that I think I just don't know enough about that area and those leaders to decide why he stopped where he did. Yeah. Because like you said, he's not stupid, so I don't think that. I don't know. I think maybe there was more opposition than he thought, but not enough for him to be completely repelled from the preparation to take the whole country if that's what he wanted to do.
Definitely could, yeah.
Zeke, when you were in one of the chats a few episodes ago, you were talking about this is not the entire Russian force. This is whatever he was willing to commit to this particular conflict. Mm-hmm. If he wanted the whole country, he would have taken the whole country. He obviously didn't. So I don't know what that reason is. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure why it stopped there.
I feel like the logical reason would be for the inevitable. I'm going to reach out and I'm going to aggress towards this nation. I need to be ready to take the punch back. So that would be to me the only logical and like the first logical reason towards it. That I've never really thought about it like that until you were just talking about it. That actually makes sense. Yeah, it's like, hey, this is the spearhead, and then everybody else is ready, in case the entire world actually does punch back, I'll be ready. Could be defensive. Which then begs the question, when we have essentially proven at this point that we won't punch back, is the rest of that force coming?
Right.
Or is this really what he's willing to work with? I mean, he just put in that Russian general that was in charge during their Syria occupation. I mean, that was in Afghanistan, just like it was back in the 80s. Was it in the 80s and 90s with the in Afghanistan? Yeah. It's like the same type of situation that we've all been dealing with for the last 20 years.
Right.
Is that why he's put him in charge now? Is because that's what we're looking at. We're going to look at another 20-year war with Ukraine?
That's really interesting. How long does he keep playing by the same rules before he decides, fuck it, let's just get after it? Yep. That's very interesting.
Who knows?
Do you guys have anything else you want to say on this?
Yeah, but...
but
we could do it again.
Intertwine in the next segment. It'll probably intertwine.
Deal. Absolutely. Then we can go and we can take a break right here, and we'll be back in 3 minutes, like last time. And
actually, guys, I apologize. I have to put my kid to bed.
No problem.
Take care.
Do you mind if we do the fourth segment in place of the third, and we do the third afterwards?
Absolutely.
Hey, we could do that.
We can do that. Are you cool with that, Zeke? That works for you?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Excellent.
Yeah. And just jump back in like you did before, and we'll see you when you come back, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. Like I got a kid, Zeke has a kid, no problem at all.
Yep.
Family first, man. Yeah, family first, no problem.
All right. We'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to the Salt